Hey everybody, how's it going? First of all, welcome to Educational Assessments. Today we're going to be talking about grading philosophies, and what does assessments and grades, what do they actually mean? So let's go over that a little bit. So what are your grading philosophies? And I just kind of want to give you something to think about. So here we have 5 students, and this was their final grades on their report cards in sixth grade social studies. Vasan had an 85%, which is a B. Gage had a 78%, which is a C. Edwin had a 95%, which is an A. Tyven had a 74%, which is a D. And Swaycha had an 85%, which is a B. So, if you were one of their parents and you got this report card and you saw that Swaycha had an 85% in social studies, what would that tell you? What would that indicate just by only seeing her grade? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think about that. Alrighty. A common response that I get is, for instance, Swaycha had an 85%. That means she understood 85% of the content that was taught in social studies for that 9-week period. Or that meant that Gage mastered about 78% of the content standards that was taught in social studies for that quarter of the year. That's what grades generally would tell us. You know, if there was a quiz and there were 10 questions on the quiz and a student missed 2 questions, that means they understood or retained 80% of the material that was to be covered on the quiz. But is that what grades really mean? As an educator, as a teacher, have you ever done something like this? Here's a rubric where students had to write a personal narrative. The rubric was given to the students first, so they knew exactly what they were graded on. But if you look up here, the first thing is creativity. That's worth 20 points. Now remember, as educators, we have standards that the state gives us, or the college gives us, or the educational governing body gives us that we have to teach. And we're supposed to assess to make sure that students are understanding those standards. Creativity is not a standard that I've ever seen before. So, if I'm grading a student on creativity and it's worth, like here, 20% of their grade, am I really gauging the content standards that I'm supposed to teach? Just something to think about. Or here's another one. Here is an essay on themes in The Outsiders. The first thing right here, is it legible in cursive handwriting? That's 5 points. Is it blue or black ink? That's 5 points. So, if we think about it, now 10% of their grade has to do with penmanship and ink. If we keep going, interesting beginning of a book. What does interesting mean? Another one down here is interesting ending with the summary. Again, what does interesting mean? Just something to think about. Here's another one that I've seen before. Here's a math problem. And I know in math class, we're always preaching to our kids, show your work. Here's a student that did a word problem. They got the question correct, but she didn't show her work. So they got -5 points. Now, a lot of times, math teachers will say, well, you need to show your work so I understand your thinking process. Is thinking processes a standard that you have to cover in math? Something to think about. Or here's another one. Students showed their work. They got the answer correct. They forgot to put their name. 2 points off. Is ensuring that a name on top of the paper, is that a standard or an objective that's assigned to us by the state or by the university that we have to cover? Here's another one, an essay on the Civil War. This one down here, grammar and mechanics. Now, this grammar mechanics is worth 20% of their grade. Did this history teacher teach these students about grammar or mechanics, or does this history teacher assume that their English teacher, either previously in a different school year or this year, taught them the correct grammar mechanics? So is this history teacher grading on something that another teacher possibly taught? And within the content standards of U.S. history in the 8th grade, are grammar mechanics in the history content standards? So now is this teacher assessing something that's not in their standards and they haven't taught? Again, just something to think about. Now here's an example of a college course that I teach. This course is adolescent development and education. Now I have to make sure as an educator, when I assess my college students, I'm assessing them based on these standards that the university gave me. And I have to be sure that I don't assess them on something that's not in these standards that's going to make or break or have a huge percentage of their grade. I'm not saying that creativity can't be a part of a rubric. I'm not saying that you can't punitively punish a kid for turning in a work late and taking off points. What I'm saying is you just have to keep some of these things in mind and think, are you grading for content gained and understood? Or are you grading for compliance? And if that compliance piece is so large, it's going to make or break or fail a student, you really got to keep that in mind. So now, again, there's no right or wrong answer. That's why it's called a philosophy. But I hope you can rethink and kind of ponder about your grading philosophies and how you're utilizing your grading philosophies within your classroom. All right, y'all take care. Thank you so much. Bye.